After Wimbledon finals, Novak Djokovic said that Carlos Alcaraz is a mix of him, Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. And if that really is the case, then Carlos is a dream tennis player, but naturally if there is a dream player, then there should be a nightmare tennis player. And that's why we are here to create the worst player possible based on these criteria: forehand, backhand, serve, return, clutchness, height, movement, mental, and finally personality. And there is only one restriction: every player that gets used should be in the ATP top 100. So if you want to create your own nightmare player in the comment section down below, then keep that in mind. But now let's start the creation of the player with the backhand, and unfortunately it's a pretty obvious pick: Matteo Berrettini. It is undoubtedly the biggest weakness in his game. Everybody knows about it, everybody jokes about it even more than they joke about his calves, but the absence of a great backhand for Matteo is sad. Because if he had a great backhand, I legit think that he would have won Wimbledon championships by now, but he doesn't, and realistically if he wasn't that tall, then he wouldn't be that high in the rankings, and that is why for the height criteria I'm picking the clay court enthusiast Sebastian Baez. I mean, there is not much to explain. Broski is 5'7", or for normal people he is 1 meter and 70 centimeters tall, which means that he barely clears the net, and that is not ideal for a tennis player. The same way having a bad serve is not recommended if you want to reach the best results in tennis. So for the worst serve I am picking Baez's father, Diego Schwartzman. Is his serve bad because of his height? Yes. Do I care about it in this situation? No. In his prime, Diego was probably one of the few players who was more dangerous on return rather than his own serve. But if we are making the nightmare player, then we can't allow him to have a great return, so as the worst returner I am choosing Maxime Cressy. This year, out of the active players on tour, he is comfortably the worst returner in the top 100 based on the return games won percentage metric. And even based on the eye test, you can see that he is not a real threat whilst returning, and that is probably because of his below average movement on the baseline, but I think there is a worse player movement wise in the top 100, and his name is Marc-Andre Huesler. If you are not familiar with his game, then just know he is also a huge server who hopes that the ball won't come back to him, because if it does, then brother is in trouble. He moves like he is stuck in the quicksand, and that is why he is a no-brainer pick in this category. And speaking of no-brainers, now is the time to pick the worst player in the top 100 based on their mental, and again I think it's an easy pick because in my opinion there is nobody worse than Corentin Moutet in this department. There are too many times when he behaves like he is better than he actually is. He goes for trick shots, but unfortunately for him he stings at those. He goes for shots that are not suitable at that moment, and then he blames everyone else rather than himself, and I dislike him for that. But there is a Frenchman who is very similar in that regard, who I will use in the forehand criteria, and his name is Benoit Paire. I can already hear you saying, but he is not in the top 100 right now, to which my answer is, I know, but this is my video, so I'll make an exception to the rule. But as far as Benoit's forehand goes, everybody knows that his forehand is a mechanical disaster. Players poke fun at him for it.
I think we should create a tennis player. So Cock, you go first. What stroke would you pick? Forehand.
Forehand. For Benoit Paire.
And generally it is just a glaring issue in his game that I had to use in this creation of this imaginary nightmare player. Sticking on the subject of Frenchmen, for the clutchness category I'm picking the channel favorite, and you can say his name with me, Hugo Humbert. Unfortunately, bro doesn't even have a resemblance of a clutch gene in his DNA. This year alone, he lost 4 matches where he had multiple match points. He has the second worst tiebreak win percentage in the top 100, and even though it didn't happen this year, I will always remember his choke against a pretty sad version of Nick Kyrgios in the second round of the Australian Open in 2021. And moving on to someone who has definitely had nightmares involving Nick Kyrgios, my pick for the worst personality in top 100 is none other than the modern day Greek philosopher Stefanos Tsitsipas. His constant excuses for his bad play, his insufferable post-match interviews, his awful Tumblr-esque tweets, and in general his crybaby attitude lands him as the worst personality in an ATP Top 100. So this is my nightmare tennis player. Comment yours in the comment section down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more unique tennis content, and until next time, take it easy, my friend.